Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. And you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And with us today, we have Beth, Junmi, Andy, Aaron, and I'm Brian. And today, actually, this is a conversation that Aaron brought to us in the Slack channel. Aaron, we always talk about this. That we have a back Slack channel that is sort of all things Daily AI Show behind the scenes. It's where we come up with new show ideas, obviously, but there's all sorts of conversations in there. We'll give you a quick hint and sneak peek that we will have a newsletter coming out very, very soon. And part of that newsletter will be giving people a little bit of a peek behind the curtain into that Slack channel, because we've had people ask us for that before and say, hey, like, we'd like to know what else you're talking about when you're not on the live show. And the reality is we're like, in the last week, I got an update and it said there was like over 150 different chats or posts, I guess it would be, inside our Slack channel. So it just kind of tells you the volume that the 7 of us have. And so we thought, okay, what's some better ways to be able to share that with you? Well, one way obviously is like we're doing today, and there'll be more to come on the newsletter, how you can sign up for it and all the goodness that will come with it. We're still working on it. And by the way, if you have suggestions about things you'd like to see in the newsletter, hey, we're all ears, because we definitely want to put something out that not only do we think is value added for our community and the people who are listening to us, but obviously we would love to have stuff in there that you guys think is value added as well. Bringing us back to the topic today, Aaron, you shared with us, and I'd love for you to just maybe start us off with a little bit of a background, but this is by a gentleman called Marcus Sheridan, who I personally didn't know, but Aaron, you posted about it, and Carl said he also knows this guy and was a mentor to him. And he wrote a LinkedIn article not too long ago, May 22nd, so a week ago, called 3 Questions Companies Are Ignoring About AI, but must confront. And that's really going to be the topic of this show. First, we'll talk about who Marcus is, but then obviously we want to dig into these 3 questions and give you our opinions, our thoughts, our perspective on those 3 questions and how they are going to impact people, how they're going to impact your business or what you currently do in industry. And that's kind of what Marcus is getting at. So there's the setup. Aaron, can you kind of help us out, help me out, help our audience out with who Marcus is, how you know him, and let's just start there.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, Marcus Sheridan is he's a specialist in content marketing, is probably the easiest way to put it, which is a large part of what I do for my business. And he wrote this book, They Ask You Answer. You'll notice that I've got lots of little post-it note things there that gives you a hint of how much value is in there. There's an interesting backstory here. So he used to run a swimming pool installation business in the States. And when the GFC hit, the global financial crisis, his business literally fell off a cliff. And so what he started doing at the time, out of desperation more than anything else, was thinking about what kind of questions do people have when it comes to buying a swimming pool, because we're not talking about a $500 purchase here. We're talking $10, $20, $50, $100,000. What kind of questions do people have, and what kind of answers they're looking for? So to me, it was basically SEO in some respects, but he basically started creating blog content for the website, and it took off really successfully very early. But it was probably back in the days when it was really easy to put decent content up and you would get found on Google pretty easily. It's a lot tougher to do that nowadays. But he took his business from there, and he is now to me, he's like the guru. I don't necessarily use that term favorably sometimes, but he's somebody I trust when it comes to this stuff. And his whole motto is that before somebody buys from you, they need questions answered, and they need to know that you're reliable and trustworthy and can, do the job that they're looking to pay someone to do. So that's his background, I guess. Interesting enough, before the book came out, and it's available on Amazon, he had an ebook version of it that he gave away in the very early days, which I want to say was probably at least 5+ years ago. I actually read that ebook while I was in hospital. So I got my partner to print it out and bring it to me. So while I'm in hospital being ill and all sorts of fun stuff, I read the book, and that was like, he just impacted with me big time about how I love his philosophy about business and marketing and that kind of stuff. And I still do. I mean, my whole business is really built around the concepts that he teaches. And yeah, that's Marcus in a nutshell. He's got lots of content obviously out there. So that's the point.
I think it's always cool when you were just talking about this, obviously, and whether you intentionally or unintentionally find yourself with free time to sit down and read a book and just consume it. But I love that idea of when somebody, like, you're just flipping the pages and it feels like they're talking directly to you, and you're going like, yes, this is what people need to be thinking about and stuff. So that's really, really cool. And I know Carl couldn't be here on the show today, but Carl had mentioned in the Slack channel, we'll let him talk about it more maybe when he's back, but he was saying that Marcus was a mentor to him as well. Now, I don't know if that means in the personal sense, or like you're saying, Aaron, he just really liked his teachings and whatever he was writing a blog about stuff. So we'll have to get, maybe, unless anybody else knows, we'll have to get a clarification on Carl on that.
Yeah. I think Carl said he met him at a conference, but whether there was anything beyond that, and maybe he was just like me, bought the book, loved it, and has sort of taken that philosophy on. I'm not sure.
Stay tuned. It's not one of the 3 questions, but it is a question we will answer.
And listen,
show.
we're growing here. We're peanuts away from hitting our first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which we're very, very excited about. Quick squirrel note on this one. I happen to be over at Disney Springs this holiday weekend, walking around with my wife and having a good time. If you don't know, like, Disney Springs is like a free open air mall, let's call it, at Disney. It doesn't cost anything to get into. And I saw people having I sat down, my wife was going to get poutine. Wish Carl was here for that. There was a couple standing in front of me, and they were clearly doing a YouTube review of food. And you see this from time to time around the Disney parks. Is very popular. I said, so they finished filming. I was very quiet, and I said, what's your channel? And they were like, oh my God. So thank you so much for asking. Anyway, long story short, they've now built up to about 9,000 followers. And we were talking about the fun of hitting that first 1,000 followers and how you really just feel it, So anyway, I say all that to say, my side note there, my sidebar was, pretty soon Marcus is clearly going to have us on stage with him, and it'll just be a matter of time before he sees the value in the Daily AI Show crew here, and he's inviting us up on stage. And like some of our other friends, we'll just start calling him our friend, and that will manifest its way through. And people will say to him, "How do you know the Daily AI Show?" Marcus will be like, "I don't, but maybe I should."
Yeah. Hey, if you're listening, Marcus, let me know. I'd love to interview you for the show.
Hey, listen, you never know. SEO works in weird and mysterious ways, and his name will be part of the writing for both YouTube in the show description, as well as all the other places. So who knows? He may see himself get linked on LinkedIn. This is the article. I just pulled it up on the screen. Again, it's called 3 Questions Companies Are Ignoring About AI But Must Confront. And I want to make sure that now we kind of have a feel for who Marcus is. And on here, he says he's a keynote speaker helping sales, marketing, leadership professionals connect deeper and win more trust, and so on and so forth. And he's currently got 76 articles on LinkedIn, which is a handful for sure. So he has a bit of an intro here, but this is really where we want to get into the meat potatoes of today's conversation. And let's just go ahead and give a little quick opening here, and then we'll talk about question number 1. So he does say he's blessed to travel and so on and so forth, some big, some small. But what I am seeing is the same. And he has this in bold and italics. There are very few hard conversations happening with AI. And what are the hard conversations we need to be having? Here are 3 questions you should be discussing in your company right now. So let's discuss them. Number 1, how much of a threat is AI to our industry and company? Meaning whatever, insert you, right? Insert your company industry. He says, for example, there's a very big difference between AI threat levels of my swimming pool company versus my sales marketing company Impact. AI likely won't be building swimming pools for a long time, but sales, marketing strategy, coaching, etc. ? Yeah, that business model is under serious threat. We can't ignore this reality, or we can do something. We can ignore this reality, or we can do something about it. Okay, so let's pause there. So how much of a threat is AI to our industry and company? So who wants to kind of jump off from there?
So these conversations are really hard to have, right? I mean, that's one of the core pieces in this. And in fact, that's a scary thing to look at. Like, let's just name that up front. what you're sort of confronting is this rapid pace of change, the ever evolving capabilities of AI that is both absolutely happening and also weirdly unpredictable in terms of specificity, right, and consistency. So you're so you're like moving around trying to figure out this kind of thing, and you're also confronting change management, right? So you're not just confronting your own kind of excitement or resistance or whatever your initial reaction is, or your personal reaction to what AI is bringing. So all of that is wrapped up in trying to get yourself to a place where you can be present to the reality, or the current what looks like reality, of how much of a risk is what's and these are I'm excited for the show today because these are conversations that I love to have and facilitate. So let's go.
Yeah. One of the things I guess I would say about this, I've got a bit of a personal experience that might give some people a bit of insight to this. So primarily my background has been paid advertising, like Google ads and Facebook ads. And I think it was about 2 years ago, I don't remember exactly. A lot of you may or may not know this, but Apple decided they were going to start blocking Facebook ad tracking. Now, we all know that Facebook tracks you and it follows you around the web and it serves you content based on what you do and what you engage with. Well, Apple's ad platform has something called the Pixel. It's just a piece of code that tracks what you engage with. And it was amazingly good. And like back in those days, I was primarily working with real estate agents here in Australia, helping them generate leads for their business. And it was amazingly effective. I could go into any suburb in Australia, set up an ad campaign, be generating leads to my clients within a couple of days. And it was very predictable. Now, after nearly 19 years in digital marketing, let me tell you, it's hard to find very predictable at the best of times. So what happened is Apple decided they were going to go privacy-centric. There's a whole story on that I won't go into, but they basically gave people the option for iPhone and iPad users to block Facebook's application on their device from tracking them. And as you would expect, most people, probably 95% of people, decided, yeah, I like that. I don't want Facebook tracking me. And I can go into my inbox in my email and I can see the day where it impacted my account, because the lead gen for my clients fell off a cliff overnight. Mm-hmm. Like it went from, a couple of hundred leads a day to 1 or 2 or 3 leads a day. And it was very, very obvious. Now, I kind of relate that to where AI is going to come in and impact in some industries. And I certainly think marketing is one area where it's going to impact it. At the moment, we're all kind of sticking our toe in the water thinking, yeah, this is cool. Maybe this is not, but people are having the hard conversations. So imagine if your business is a high risk business when it comes to AI completely revolutionizing that. You could go from being big, successful, profitable to potentially out of business. I don't want to over dramatize this, but potentially out of the business in a day or a week or a month. And so that's why I think it's really important. That's why I sent this article through to everyone. That's why I think it's really important that you start having these conversations. And if you don't have anyone in-house that is an expert on this, and chances are you don't, then you need to start talking to people who know more about it. Obviously, we're all available if you want to do that. But that aside, you need to be getting more information, and you need to start thinking about how am I going to adapt to this if it impacts my business. And it will. There will be a lot of businesses out there that will be impacted significantly, hopefully for the better, but potentially for far worse.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And one area I've definitely seen this, we've all seen this, is LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn has been around for many years, although it's funny how it's sometimes seen as still a bit of a startup. Microsoft has owned it for a decade or more. It's growing considerably. We all lean on LinkedIn. Hell, this show is live on LinkedIn.
Hi.
But the one of the things that obviously I work a lot, and before AI, I solely focused on LinkedIn strategy for my clients. And obviously part of that was building a personal brand. So it's very important. We knew this years ago for CEOs, CXOs, different people in the company, all the way down to your sales reps and so on and so forth, to build their own personal brand. Before that, it was maybe considered a little taboo to do that, or there was reasons why people wouldn't. They say, oh, I'll just lean on my company page. I bring that up to say that at my previous job and earlier in this job, I've been at scale 3 years now. 3 years ago, to write copyright and to stand out on LinkedIn was a hard process. To get real professionals in there and help build a personal brand was tough. It still is. I'm not taking anything away from anybody building personal brands. It takes attention to detail. But what we have definitely seen with AI is now that writing AI content can now become a commodity. And so now all these businesses that and CEOs that maybe had a competitive advantage because maybe 2-3 years ago, they were building their personal brand, got themselves up to maybe 10, 15,000 followers on LinkedIn, which would be substantial. It's definitely above the normal average. Now it's much, much harder for them to be able to do that because of AI. So now when I look at a question like how much of a threat is AI to our industry? Well, insert any industry really. And if you were previously leaning on something like AI or LinkedIn to build your personal brand, to attract people to your business and say, well, there's many businesses that do this, but I want to work with Aaron. Period. Right. I love what Aaron puts out. I love what Marcus puts out. I'm going to buy Impact, his marketing company. I'm going to work with Impact because I love Marcus. Right. Well, that's getting harder now because of the proliferation of AI content. So now any company has to be thinking about, how do I yet again differentiate? If now just writing content and putting out new posts every single day or 3 times a day is basically an automated process if you choose to be so or do so. Now, how does AI impact your business? Well, you got to figure out how to pivot now. And whereas 3 years ago it was about building a personal brand, now it's okay, not just that, but how do you put out video? How do you put out different types of content that are still going to attract your audience, your persona, the audience that you want, and still get them to know, like, and trust you so they come to your business? And look, there's not much industries, I don't think, in that particular use case that it's not impacting. And businesses definitely have to sit up and say, okay, it's not just about writing content anymore. That's just one small area of one part of how companies might be doing. And of course, there's thousands of these examples.
In a more direct response to the question, which industries are going to be most directly impacted in the near term by the advent of AI, I think you have to put a big circle around creative marketing agencies with a caveat that if they're truly creative and differentiated, then they'll probably have a longer duration than the ones that are simply doing execution of go-to-market strategies and marketing programs and customer support. So if you're an agency out there, and think how many zillions of agencies there are out there globally that have supported companies with marketing services, that is, over the course of the next decade, going to be substantially replaced by AI. Already customer support, CSRs are being replaced by very, very sophisticated AI assistants. And I think those two are the industries that you have to think about right now.
Well, another example for that is stock photography, right? Like, if your dream is to become a stock photographer, like, let me tell you right now, like, pivot, because that is no longer, that is once DALL-E and Midjourney and Leonardo Stable Diffusion, those sorts of things got into a place where they were relatively good at creating things that looked like stock photography. That is something that dropped kind of quickly, precipitously, with the exception of who has rights to that. So if you're looking for stock photography that you personally own rights for and nobody else can use it, that's still a question in our stuff. But that is an example of an industry that, like, boom, a huge change has already happened. It's pretty quiet, the change. Maybe that's because I don't have personal stock photographers in my circle, but I can certainly see the way that they talk in online communities.
One of my best friends is a photographer. She didn't necessarily do stock or doesn't do necessary stock photography, but there's just no doubt the impact it's had. Now, in photography, I will speak for her a little bit. My friend Angela, who's just amazing. But obviously, she was impacted years ago with the advent of a phone, over needing a camera, right? I'm not the phone, but the iPhone, right? And being able to quickly take what people felt were, well, it's got a 12 megapixel image or whatever camera, that's the same as her Rebel blah blah blah, or Canon like insert some high level camera. I'm a photographer now, and of course that's not the case. She has real skill that she's built up over 20 plus years of experience, but she's able to see it. So like I don't think AI is like hitting her over the head, because she's been dealing with this sea change for quite some time. Marketing, things like that, obviously finance, legal. If I was a low like intro coder, I would be concerned. These are sort of like, to me, low hanging fruit. But I think back to question one, and then let's pull up question two. Like if you're a CEO, CXO, if you're in charge of a company, or even in leadership at a company, and you're currently sitting there listening to us right now and going, well, we're not marketing, we're not answer, we're okay.
Let me give you an example, Brian.
Go for it.
Let me give you an example, which kind of fits into the second question of Marcus's, which is how much of a threat is AI to the specific positions we have on staff? Which ones will become redundant? So there was a TV show documentary here in Australia I watched a few years ago, and we were talking about AI. This was before ChatGPT. This was just AI as it was known back there, and they gave an example of students from university studying law. And they put a good law student who had to do maybe an entry-level lawyer role, who had to do research for a case. Mm-hmm. They put that student up against a computer with AI, which had all of the legal stuff in it. And basically it was, here's the specifications of the case. You need to do the research and come up with some, I'm not a lawyer, don't play one on TV, but you need to come up with the basics for the case. And the lawyer went off and did what she would normally do. She'd go out and search the law library and all this kind of stuff. And the guy on the computer with the AI just went, here's the details, give me the details, and push the button. And within a couple of minutes, it was done. And that young lady was looking there going, excuse my French, I'm going to swear, I apologize. She basically said, holy shit, I'm out of a job. Now, that's a lawyer. That's nothing to do with marketing. And there are particularly businesses, I think, where there's knowledge involved, particularly where there's lots of written knowledge, there I think definitely at high risk. If you happen to be maybe a gardener or a landscape artist or a chef or something, your job's probably not going to be anywhere near at risk. But anyone in the knowledge space and the educational expertise space, I think you're all at risk, because AI can pull that information out and maybe at least knock out the low-level and mid-level people in the industry. So only the real top pros with the great networks and the great expertise are the ones that are going to survive this.
And I wouldn't say, like you mentioned, gardener or landscape architect, right? My sister-in-law is a by trade interior designer, but she works for a major food company and has to do with restaurants and stuff like that. That's what she does now. But she, by trade, she came out of school as that. And I think what I see with that, Aaron, is like, okay, you're right. If you're a landscape architect, you're working with people and you're going to say, I'm going to redo your front or backyard and blah, blah, blah. Well, obviously we know there's so many AI tools that are either out now or coming with virtual abilities and overlays and things like that. So whereas, yes, maybe that particular person is not at risk for when it comes to question two, like who on my staff is at risk the most, or who should we be looking as far as AI? I would be definitely looking at and saying like, okay, do I have a job that currently takes 5 of us at an office, but now with the advent of insert AI technology or solution, it could be done with 2 of us. And if you're looking, I mean, that may be a lot of people, but if you're thinking that way, then you also have to be thinking like, okay, what can I start to do to differentiate now? Is it further education? Is it deep dive into these AI technologies to future-proof myself against other people who are perhaps as talented or more talented than I am at my specific job? And how am I going to protect myself to make sure I still have a job in 5-10 years? And you have to be thinking, this is my opinion, but how can I dive in? How can I figure out how to use AI to my advantage?
So the question that Marcus is proposing is which staff people, which positions. And I would suggest that the more fruitful question in this context is which tasks. What are the tasks that happen that actually are most at risk or most at benefit from some sort of AI interaction and potential automation that connects with AI and then comes back to the person. So if you are a landscape designer in this context and you usually spend half a day designing something, and now you can spend 30 minutes designing something and have a comparable result, that is what we're talking about in this. I do also know that if you loved that half day and now it happens in 30 minutes where you just look at it and go, yeah or nah, that massively changes what you're doing.
Mhm.
Like I'm not I'm not ignoring that experience and what that is, but that is the context of what we're talking about. So it's actually, I think, easier to look at tasks and how much of a position is engaged in those specific tasks.
And I have to be
So
honest, when
I'm
I
gonna
mentioned landscape artist, I was primarily thinking of somebody who was actually out in there with their hands on the tools,
Right.
forgetting that they've got to design it before. So, I mean, ChatGPT is not going to replace the man or the woman driving the shovel, for example.
Correct.
Once OpenAI gets their robots out and they take over the world, then that's all done and dusted. But you're right, in terms of designing the garden or coming up with the concepts, that's going to be a lot quicker and faster. And yeah, it's going to be harder to differentiate yourself, I suspect.
So I made a list of all the jobs that Perplexity says are at risk. And it's too long to recite here. I'm not going to bother. And there are very, very few jobs that they say are, going to be in a defensible position. And this leads us to, Elon Musk's repeated prediction about the future, which he just made at VivaTech last week again, which is that in the future, work will be optional. You'll only work if you want to and you feel a need to, be involved in something productive, because to vast extent, robots and AI are going to make all the things that humans need in order to survive and thrive. And so let's take that, and he describes this, by the way, as the outcome in the benign scenario, meaning, this is not the one where there's radical disruption. And one of the enabling features of that benign scenario is universal high income, meaning there's a redistribution in effect of the output of AI plus robotics that's fairly apportioned to society in a way that, you're comfortable and you don't have to work. All of your needs are taken care of, in effect. So the response to that is, well, what can you do today to defend the job that you need today in order to maintain your personal economy? And there's new parlance that I never heard of all through my career, which is upskilling and reskilling. And what they mean by upskilling and reskilling is, okay, number one, pursue AI literacy. Why? Because this will allow non-technical professionals, the ones not actually shepherding the AIs that are doing all the work for us, but the non-technical professionals to effectively collaborate with AI. Well, that's a kind of a circular argument that says, you're not going to be necessary anymore. But what you need to do now is learn how to be a companion to the things that have obviated your contributions to society. Now there will be other contributions, but I just think there's not a lot of substance to upskilling and reskilling, except for us right now, because there's a window, and I think the window is at the 10-year mark. But during that window, you can, by exploiting the capabilities of AI, which is not a trivial undertaking. I can tell you, I've spent the last year and a half working on it myself, but developing the aptitude and the skills to actually apply AI to something productive. We're still at the early stages. So upskilling by achieving AI literacy and practical effectiveness using AI, those things are intensely valuable in the near term.
Right.
I
The
wanted to just
flip
bring
side
up-
of what Andy's talking about is the $1 billion unicorn, right? Is the single person
Yeah.
unicorn, upskilling, relying on AI to help you do that. Brian.
I just wanted to point out that Andy had either intentionally or not intentionally rolled into question number 3 or the third question. So I wanted to call that out, which is about upskilling. So the question was, how are we upskilling our staff so that we're creating a culture of AI now and not just waiting to be passed by from our competitors? And he actually calls out, Marcus does in the article about Moderna. And this is from the CEO, Stefan, I don't know, CEO of Moderna. We believe very profoundly at Moderna that ChatGPT and what OpenAI is doing is going to change the world. We're looking at every business process from legal to research to manufacturing to commercial and thinking about how to redesign them with AI. And Mark is just pointing out that like these are the rare cases, not the exception to the rule. And he goes on to say the reality is CEOs need to get in the AI sandbox and make it a major initiative. This starts by getting the leadership teams in the AI sandbox with them. Next, they need to identify the AI champions. Then comes the training, education, etc. So this is I would consider this to be a common play, right? You get top-down support. Sometimes you can build it from bottom up. I will tell you, just in my experience, that we have actually had a lot of success at scaled with going bottom up. We thought initially, and I'm not saying it doesn't work this way, but initially our thought was get the sales leaders, explain to them, teach them, do whatever we need to do to convince them that AI should be a priority and they do need to be in the sandbox, then filter it down with education, right? Just exactly what Marcus just said. That does work, but I will tell you what we are finding, just in my use case, is that is actually we're finding more bottom up. What we're actually doing is finding that there are many, thousands of sales reps who are using ChatGPT or similar tools every single day, and their leadership has zero idea, either because they're worried about the implications of their job, because it's outright banned, and they're using it on their phone because they cannot use it on their computer. I can tell you I have family members and such who cannot use it on their work computer, period. End of discussion. So they find workarounds, as you would, right? Because they still are going to use an AI technology that they believe can help them be more efficient at their job. But the business has no idea what's going on. So a lot of times what we're finding is this bottom-up approach where we do find and find people and provide solutions to the base workers who are then bringing it up the chain to the point where we find sales leaders come to us and they say, hey, I'm just now becoming aware that 6 of our sales reps use your scaled AI solutions. And we're like, that's in fact, they do. That's correct. And they're like, how do we make this a thing? How do we become official? How do I like you? So like we work with a lot of business with that, but it does become back to this sort of upskilling. But I just want to point out that at least in my perspective, what I've seen it work in both directions with it.
And I think the thing I would say, Brian, is that particularly if you're a business owner and you've got staff working for you, and maybe you haven't really done much with AI, you need to start thinking about the benefits it potentially offers you. Because you know what, I've been considered by people in the know, I've been a very good marketer for the last 18 or 19 years. But AI is making a lot of what I do better because it's either speeds the process up or helps me think outside the box more, or even provides advice and stuff like that to me. So as a business owner, it's not necessarily about getting rid of staff or replacing their workload with AI. Leverage the technology by getting good at it so that it improves your business. It raises the water and floats all the boats up. And that way you can outcompete your competitors who are not doing this. You can start having a really significant advantage over them that they are sticking their head in the sand and not taking on. So, really important. Marcus and I both come to the conclusion at pretty well the same time that, as far as content creation goes, creating blogs and written stuff is fine, but we're going all in on, he's started going all in, but I still do a lot of video because I don't see video going away anywhere near as quickly as written content, because it's still harder to produce even with AI video cloning. But in 5 years' time, who knows? People like Marcus and I may be retired, and we'll hope like hell that we get universal wealth and don't have to work for a living and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, we're all screwed.
Yeah, anyway, I think it's good to highlight that part, Aaron, and more on what Andy was saying. Andy might be totally right that there's this 10-year period where we can take advantage of this gap and upskill or adjust our businesses. But I think the most important part of this is closing the gap, right? It's because of the gap between the society and the technology advancing that we're going to see these huge changes and things like Elon's talking about, universal high income or UBI or any of those kinds of concepts, because those are all systemic changes. But for our audience who wants to be concerned with their business now and how it's going to affect their business, they need to make the change now. They need to, increase their AI literacy. This needs to be applied. And like how Marcus says, an AI now approach is so that whatever changes are going to come, whether they're net positive or, they might be a little more dystopian, you need to adapt to those changes. And luckily we're humans and we're great at that. So I think we just need to make sure that when we have our group like Daily AI Show that can help people realize, hey, learn this thing, become aware of it, know what it's about, apply it to your daily life, because it's here and it's going to affect you in a multitude of ways.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end this conversation. Of course, like I said, we will be continuing to have this conversation in our Slack channels as we discuss it more, and we'll bring that to you as we can. The rest of this week, tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the news over the last 7 days, and the news cycle continues to be hot coming into the last few days here of May. On Thursday, we're talking about data analytics and what happens. The title of that shows Data Analytics is Dead and AI is the Killer. So if you want to talk about business intelligence, if you're curious about data analytics, that's what I did for 3 years prior to working in my current role. So I feel at least partially, ready to talk about that. It's a fun topic for me. And I really definitely want to talk about what does the future of data analytics look like in the age of AI? And I think that's going to be a really eye-opening conversation. So that's on Thursday. Come back for that. Friday, we're doing an honest review of Google Gemini, but not just Gemini, specifically Gemini and how it can help you in your workplace. So some things are rolled out, some things haven't. We've certainly seen, we'll talk about it tomorrow in the news, where Gemini has fallen flat with their AI overview. But we're specifically going to be talking about, hey, where can Gemini actually help you today? And where is it beneficial in your workplace? Very similar to the way that Microsoft Copilot would be with 365, which is its own mess, as we've seen. So we'll talk about that on Friday, and we'll give you our best review. And of course, we'll tell you the things where we think it absolutely falls flat. But maybe at the end of that show, you'll have 5 or 6 things that you feel like, you know what? Okay, I can reasonably and reliably use this skill right now to make my work life better. And we'll go from there. So that's what we have coming up the rest of this week. And then onward and forwards for June and the rest of the summer. It's going to be a busy summer. Keep coming back and hanging out with us. Thank you for everybody tuning in. And we will see you tomorrow for the news. Until then.
Arrivederci.
Aloha.